The afternoon of September 5, 1949, dawned electric at Cleveland Municipal Airport. More than 72,000 spectators packed the stands, eyes fixed on a radically modified P-51 Mustang, name begin, hurtling around the Thompson Trophy course at over 400 miles per hour. At the controls was Bill Odom, a pilot who had never flown a pylon race before that weekend. Odom was already legendary, known for record-breaking long-distance flights, including a global circumnavigation completed in a mere 73 hours and 5 minutes. Begin had been purchased by Jackie Cochran, the trailblazing aviatrix with more speed and altitude records than any woman alive, specifically for Odom to race. The aircraft itself was a masterpiece of engineering. Its radiator had been moved from the belly to the wing tips, and the lower fuselage had been fared over smooth. It no longer resembled a warplane. It looked like it was built solely for speed. But tragedy struck on the second lap. Odom cut inside pylon number 3 and tried to correct toward pylon 4. In an instant, the Mustang rolled inverted, flying upside down for a terrifying heartbeat before plunging into a house on West Street in nearby Berea, Ohio. Odom died instantly. So did Jean Lear and her 13-month-old son, Craig, who had only moved into that home 4 days earlier. The house erupted in flames. 72,000 people witnessed the horror unfold before their eyes. Cook Cleland, flying a Goodyear F2G Super Corsair, ultimately won the race, but the jubilation was hollow. When reporters asked him about the tragedy, he didn't mince words. Odom should never have been in that race at all. He was a cross-country pilot, a Bendix specialist. Pylon racing demanded a different temperament. Odom was talented, but in the wrong event. That crash didn't just end one pilot's life. It marked the close of Cleveland's golden age of air racing, pushing the Mustang into obscurity for over a decade. Yet the airplane itself refused to die. The P-51 Mustang, the fighter that had dominated the skies over Europe during World War II, was about to begin a second life nobody could have predicted. It would fight in Korea, serve more than 30 nations across 6 continents, cut telephone wires with propeller in the Sinai Desert, and take part in the final dogfights between piston-powered aircraft. Decades after the last factory Mustang rolled off the line, it was still flying combat missions in the Caribbean while aircraft enthusiasts circled overhead. This is a story of what happened to the P-51 Mustang after World War II. When the war ended in August 1945, the United States military faced a problem no one had foreseen. There were simply too many airplanes. North American aviation had built over 15,000 Mustangs during the war, producing more than 100 per week at peak output in Englewood, California. Now, production stopped, leaving thousands of aircraft languishing in storage across 3 continents. Maintaining them cost more than they were worth. The solution was brutal. Across the U.S. and Europe, crews began cutting up perfectly good fighters with acetylene torches or dropping 18-foot steel plates to crush them. Ed Maloney, a high school senior with a lifelong passion for aviation, witnessed this destruction at Calero Field near Chino, California. He had spent his childhood building models and clipping airplane pictures, while other kids traded baseball cards. Now, he watched B-17s and B-24s snapped in half like toys, steel plates cleaving fuselages, manuals burned in house-sized piles. Sickened but determined, Maloney rescued what he could, filling his car with documents and salvaging fragments of history. That vow, to save as many aircraft as possible, would guide him for the rest of his life. Most Americans, however, saw surplus planes as scrap. War-weary P-51 Mustang sold at auction for as little as $1,500, less than the cost of a car, despite having cost the government $51,000 each during wartime. Foreign governments acquired them even cheaper. Under the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, hundreds of Mustangs were transferred for just $1 apiece. Switzerland bought 130 Mustangs in southern Germany for $4,000 each in December 1947, flying them until 1958. The Air Force, obsessed with jets, saw no future for the piston-powered fighter. The Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star could outrun any piston aircraft in level flight, and newly forming air forces wanted jets. The Mustang seemed destined for scrapyard. Then came Korea. On June 25, 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea, sweeping south across the 38th parallel with overwhelming numbers and Soviet-built tanks. American forces in Japan scrambled, and they immediately discovered a serious problem. Jets were fast, but their loiter time over the battlefield was minimal. 80 shooting stars burned fuel so quickly that pilots barely had time to identify targets. The jets also required long, paved runways, rare on Korean soil, where airfields were short and cratered. Jet engines ingested debris and flamed out. In contrast, the Mustang could loiter for hours, operate from dirt strips, and carry substantial ordnance. Hundreds of these fighters sat in U.S. storage, awaiting a cutting torch that never came. The Air Force pulled them from mothballs, working around the clock to make them airworthy again. 145 Mustangs were loaded onto the USS Boxer, which sailed from Alameda, California, on July 14th, reaching Yokosuka, Japan, 8 days and 7 hours later, the fastest trans-Pacific crossing by an aircraft carrier in history. By late July, F-51 Mustangs were back in combat. The designation had changed, but the aircraft remained the same. In June 1948, the newly independent United States Air Force replaced the P for pursuit with F for fighter, and the P-51 became the F-51. Its missions had changed as well. Lieutenant E. Helleth, a young pilot with barely 200 hours in Mustangs, flew with the Republic of Korea Air Force in those desperate early days. On July 10, 1950, Helleth's radio failed mid-mission over Shonan, yet he spotted 2 North Korean tanks below. With no way to warn his flight, he attacked, destroying 1 tank, then 9 trucks and a half-track along the road. When he landed, he was nearly out of ammunition, having walked and hitchhiked 5 days back to base afterward. This was the brutal reality the Mustang faced in Korea. Close air support, interdiction, ground attack. The romantic era of high-altitude dogfighting was gone. Mustang pilots now targeted tanks, trucks, and supply convoys, missions that came at terrible cost. Its liquid-cooled Merlin engine was vulnerable. A single bullet through the radiator could seize the engine in minutes. Ground fire accounted for the majority of the 172 Mustang pilot casualties in Korea. The roar of the crowd at Cleveland Municipal Airport on that September afternoon in 1949 was deafening, but would be silenced forever by tragedy. Bill Odom, a celebrated long-distance pilot with a record-breaking round-the-world flight in just 73 hours, had never raced around pylons before. Yet, he was in a radically modified P-51 Mustang named Begin, bought by Jackie Cochran, the legendary aviatrix who had shattered more speed and altitude records than any woman alive. The Mustang gleamed like liquid metal, its radiator relocated to the wingtips, fuselage smooth for maximum speed. It was the perfect racing machine. On lap 2, Odom misjudged pylon 3, rolled inverted, and plunged into a house in Berea, Ohio. The crash instantly killed Odom, Jean Lear, and her 13-month-old son Craig. 72,000 spectators watched helplessly as the house burned. Cook Cleland, flying a Goodyear F2G Super Corsair, won the race but did not mince words. Odom was a long-distance pilot, not a pylon racer. This disaster ended the golden age of Cleveland air racing, grounding Mustangs for years. Yet, the P-51 Mustang refused to fade into history. After World War II, the U.S. military faced an unexpected problem. They had too many planes. Over 15,000 Mustangs sat in storage across 3 continents. Maintenance costs exceeded value. Across America and Europe, aircraft were destroyed. B-17s, B-24s, and Mustangs alike were torn apart or crushed. Teenager Ed Maloney watched in horror at Calero Field, Chino, California, as perfectly good warbirds were destroyed. His love for aviation was ignited, and he vowed to save every aircraft he could. With little money but relentless determination, he started collecting warbirds, setting the stage for what would become the Planes of Fame Museum, a sanctuary for Mustangs that would preserve their legacy for generations. While Maloney rescued aircraft in America, the Mustang story continued globally. Surplus planes sold for as little as $1,500, less than a new car. Yet their wartime costs had been around $51,000. Many were transferred to foreign nations under the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, like Switzerland, which flew 130 Mustangs until 1958. The Air Force had moved on to jets like the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star, leaving the piston-engine Mustang seemingly obsolete. But the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950 changed everything. Jets were fast but consumed fuel rapidly and required long runways, limiting their battlefield effectiveness. Mustangs could loiter for hours, operate from dirt strips, and carry heavy ordnance. Hundreds were pulled from Air National Guard units in storage, restored, and shipped aboard the USS Boxer to Japan. By late July 1950, F-51 Mustangs were back in combat, diving on tanks and supply convoys, fighting a brutal low-level war that pushed both aircraft and pilots to their limits. The Mustang's liquid-cooled Merlin engine made it vulnerable to ground fire. Even a single bullet could destroy it. Yet, despite the risks, pilots like Lieutenant E. Helleth carried out dangerous missions, attacking tanks, trucks, and half-tracks. Across the battlefield, Mustangs became terror incarnate for enemy troops, their Merlin engines heralding destruction from above. Allied nations, including Australia, South Africa, and South Korea, flew Mustangs in Korea. These aircraft were indispensable for close air support, reconnaissance, and interdiction, often flown by pilots who had survived prior wars and understood the stakes. Winter brought deadly icing conditions, primitive shelters, and improvised heating, yet the Mustang endured, proving that this warhorse could operate where jets could not. Even as jets gradually replaced the F-51 in the early 1950s, Mustangs found new roles. In Israel, for P-51s were clandestinely purchased in defiance of the American arms embargo. They flew reconnaissance and ground attack missions during Israel's War of Independence in 1948 to 1949, intercepting enemy aircraft and striking supply lines. Later, during the Suez Crisis in 1956, Mustangs performed daring low-level operations, even cutting telephone wires in the Sinai Desert using custom devices and sheer audacity. The Mustang proved adaptable beyond imagination. Fighter, bomber, reconnaissance plane, and even improvised utility aircraft. Meanwhile, back in the United States, surplus Mustangs ignited a new era of air racing. Military-grade warboats, stripped of armor and armament, were modified for speed, competing in events like the Bendix Trophy and Thompson Trophy races. Jackie Cochran, Paul Mance, and other aviators pushed these aircraft to the limit, exceeding 400 miles per hour in pylon races. Yet, danger remained ever-present. The fatal crash of Bill Odom in 1949 effectively ended Cleveland's air racing scene, grounding Mustangs for over a decade. It wasn't until 1964, with the efforts of showman Bill Stead and ABC Television, that the aircraft roared back over the Nevada desert in Reno air races, where Mustangs continued to compete at speeds surpassing wartime capabilities. The Mustang's post-war career was not limited to sport. Nations across Asia, the Middle East, and Central America kept Mustangs in operational service well into the 1970s and 1980s. From the Philippines combating insurgents to Indonesia quelling rebellions, from Guatemala and Haiti to Sweden mapping Soviet installations, Mustangs proved effective in combat long after their introduction. Even in the 1969 conflict between El Salvador and Honduras, the so-called football war, Mustangs were flown in their last propeller-driven dogfights, marking the final chapter of piston-engine aerial combat. While the Mustangs' combat days wound down, Ed Maloney's vision ensured their survival. Over a decade, he, along with restorers and collectors, rescued and rebuilt Mustangs from crash sites in foreign air forces, preserving history piece by piece. By the 1980s, airworthy Mustangs sold for over $100,000. Today, they fetch millions. More than 160 fly worldwide, appearing at airshows, racing events, and films, including Tom Cruise's Top Gun. Maverick, their Merlin engine still howling across the skies. Each aircraft carries the names, markings, and stories of the men who flew them: Tuskegee Airmen, the 4th Fighter Group, the 357th, and a legacy of fighter that refused to die, the P-51 Mustang, designed in just 102 days in 1940 as a stopgap fighter for Britain, evolved from an underperforming Allison-powered aircraft to the iconic Merlin-powered escort of World War II. It destroyed thousands of enemy aircraft, protected bombers over Europe, and later reinvented itself in Korea, Israel, Central America, and countless air shows. 8 decades later, it still flies, a testament to human ingenuity, bravery, and devotion to history. It is more than an airplane. It is a symbol of an era that refuses to end. As the Mustang story moved into the 1960s and 70s, its role shifted from battlefield to legend. The aircraft that once escorted bombers over Europe now inspired a generation of enthusiasts, pilots, and collectors. Air racing became the Mustang's new battlefield. Pilots stripped these warbirds of all military equipment, modifying them for maximum speed. Jackie Cochran's influence persisted. She had proven a woman could dominate speed records in planes built for war, and her example encouraged countless aviators to push limits. Pilots like Bob Hanna and Steve Hinton transformed the Reno air races into a showcase for Mustang power, routinely exceeding 450 miles per hour in planes that had once fought for survival in skies over Europe and Asia. The transformation of warbirds into racing legends wasn't without peril. Crashes were frequent, a brutal reminder that the Mustang was engineered for combat, not leisure. Yet, each restoration told a story of resilience. Ed Maloney's Planes of Fame Museum became a haven for these machines, preserving both history and hope. Visitors could see original P-51s alongside heavily modified racers, understanding that the Mustang's legacy was more than its speed. It was the lives, daring, and human spirit it carried. Meanwhile, globally, the Mustang quietly continued its work. In South America, a handful of nations used P-51s for counterinsurgency and border defense well into the 1970s. In the Philippines, pilots relied on their Mustangs to patrol vast islands, deterring guerrilla forces. Even in Europe, small air forces maintained fleets as training platforms and ceremonial aircraft. The Mustang's adaptability, its ability to endure in combat, reconnaissance, or civilian racing, made it nearly immortal. But the Mustang wasn't just surviving, it was evolving. Restorers, collectors, and engineers began experimenting with modern engines, avionics, and materials. Vintage P-51s could now outpace their original design without sacrificing their iconic look. Each aircraft became a living museum, a flying testament to innovation. Films, documentaries, and air shows introduced millions to the Mustang, reinforcing its place not just in history books, but in hearts worldwide. Tom Cruise's recent films brought renewed fame, but the real story lives in the thousands of hours pilots spend maintaining, restoring, and flying these warboats, feeling the roar of the Merlin engine echo through time. The Mustang story also highlights human ingenuity and perseverance. The same aircraft that survived World War II bombing runs, Korean low-level sorties, and clandestine missions in the Middle East now flies over desert airstrips and festival grounds, a bridge across eras. Its survivability and performance inspire both nostalgia and awe. It embodies the ingenuity of engineers, the courage of pilots, and the relentless passion collectors like Maloney. And yet, despite decades of fame and survival, the Mustang still commands respect. Airshow spectators watch in silent awe as these aircraft execute precise rolls, dives, and climbs, each movement a reminder of what man and machine can achieve together. Each restored P-51 is more than metal and rivets. It is memory, sacrifice, and triumph solidified in aluminum and steel. Its story is ongoing, and every flight honors the pilots who risked everything, the engineers who defied limits, and the visionaries who refused to let history die. The P-51 Mustang is not merely a relic. It is a living legend, a bridge between generations, a symbol of courage, endurance, and relentless pursuit of excellence. From the skies over Europe to the airfields of Reno, from secret missions in Israel to remote bases in Asia, the Mustang has done it all and survived. It is, in every sense, the embodiment of the phrase, designed for war, perfected for legend. The P-51 Mustang's journey through the post-war years was a story of adaptation, survival, and human obsession. By the 1960s, the aircraft had shifted from frontline combat to a quiet life in hangars, museums, and airfields around the world. But this was far from the end of its tale. In America, a new generation of warbird enthusiasts emerged. These were men and women who had not flown in World War II, had not faced the roar of the Merlin engine under enemy fire, yet they were drawn to Mustang with a near-religious fervor. Among them, Ed Maloney's legacy was unmatched. The teenager who had once watched gleaming Mustangs torn apart by cranes and acetylene torches had become a man who rescued dozens of aircraft from certain destruction. His Planes of Fame Museum in Reno, California, became a mecca for warbird preservation, where history was not just displayed but breathed, heard, and flown. Maloney understood that the Mustang story was not just about machines, but about the people who had risked everything to fly them. He worked tirelessly to track down the surviving aircraft scattered across the globe, from the desert of California to the jungles of Central America, from the airfields of Israel to the secret hangars in Sweden. Many of these Mustangs had already fought multiple wars in different countries, piloted by men who had relied on them to survive, to attack, to defend. Each aircraft carried scars, modifications, and histories that told their own unique stories. Some had been damaged in combat, patched by mechanics who had to improvise with whatever materials were on hand. Others had flown long after their supposed retirement, operating in countries that had little access to spare parts or technical manuals. Maloney became a detective, historian, and restorer all in one, following leads across continents, negotiating with foreign air forces, and sometimes paying more than he could afford just to save a single airframe from the scrapyard. While Maloney was preserving Mustangs for posterity, a different kind of battle was taking place in the skies of America. The Reno air races, reborn in the mid-1960s under the vision of Bill Steed, turned a Mustang into a living, breathing racing legend. Young pilots, often too young to have fought in World War II, discovered the thrill of controlling a warbird at its absolute limits. The aircraft were modified extensively, armor and armament stripped, rivets filled, radiators moved to reduce drag, engines tweaked for maximum horsepower. Mustangs named Straga, Voodoo, and Red became legends in their own right. The air races pushed pilots to their limits, demanding split-second reflexes, precise coordination, and nerves of steel. Hundreds of thousands of spectators flocked to the Nevada desert every September to witness machines designed for war perform feats their creators had never imagined. The Mustang had gone from protecting bombers over Europe to becoming the centerpiece of a spectacular, adrenaline-fueled spectacle. But even as the Mustang raced across the skies of Nevada, it continued to serve in more practical ways around the globe. In Southeast Asia, the Philippines relied on Mustangs to maintain order and control insurgencies. Pilots flew them against communist guerrillas in the late 1940s and early 1950s, proving that a piston-engine fighter could still dominate in a counterinsurgency role decades after its initial design. Indonesia also employed Mustangs in multiple internal conflicts, including the CIA-backed Permesta Rebellion. On May 18, 1958, Captain Ignatius Duano made history when he flew AP-51D against AB-26 Invader piloted by a CIA contractor, Alan Lawrence Pope. Duanto's Mustang downed the Invader in aerial combat, marking the only confirmed kill in Indonesian Air Force history. Pope survived, was captured, and eventually released, but the incident highlighted the Mustang's ability to remain relevant in the ever-changing battlefield of post-war conflicts. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, the Israeli Air Force had transformed surplus Mustangs into precision tools for survival and strategy. Beginning in 1948, Israel's fledgling Air Force acquired P-51s in secret, disguising them as civilian or agricultural aircraft to bypass embargoes. They were assembled in hidden orchards and flown into combat against Egyptian, Jordanian, and Syrian forces. Mustangs excelled in reconnaissance and ground attack, striking deep into enemy territory with range no other aircraft could match. In October 1956, during the Suez Crisis, Mustangs were given an unprecedented mission: to sever Egyptian telephone lines across the Sinai Desert. Flying at treetop level, risking life with every wingtip, the pilots succeeded in disabling enemy communications, facilitating a successful Israeli advance. These missions demonstrated not only the Mustang's versatility, but also the courage of the pilots who trusted a machine designed for high-altitude dogfighting to perform at the very limits of its envelope in deadly low-level attacks. The Mustang's post-war journey wasn't without tragedy. Air racing claimed lives, including Bill Odom's crash at the 1949 Thompson Trophy race in Cleveland, and the deadly battles over Korea and Israel had taken many pilots. Yet these losses reinforced the aircraft's reputation for risk and reward. Pilots who flew Mustangs knew they were flying something exceptional, a machine that required skill, courage, and respect. The aircraft rewarded those qualities with unmatched performance, whether in a racing pylon turn at 450 miles per hour or in strafing runs against armored columns in Korea. In Latin America, the Mustang remained a vital tool of power and defense. The Dominican Republic operated Mustangs for over 30 years, defending against internal revolts and external threats. These aircraft were adorned with shark mouths and bright paint schemes, visible symbols of aerial dominance. During the 1965 Civil War and subsequent American intervention, Dominican Mustangs continued to fly combat sorties, with one aircraft being shot down, the last recorded Mustang loss in battle anywhere in the world. Honduras and El Salvador saw the Mustang in one final act of aerial warfare during the brief 1969 conflict, ignited by soccer riots and long-standing border disputes. The so-called football war became a historic footnote for being the last recorded engagement between propeller-driven fighters. Mustangs faced corsairs in the sky one final time, exchanging gunfire and rockets over Central American jungles. On July 17th, Captain Fernando Soto of the Honduran Air Force shot down 3 enemy aircraft in a single engagement, marking the end of an era and cementing the Mustang's place in aviation history as a fighter capable of adapting to every challenge, even decades after creation. As combat roles dwindled, the Mustang evolved into a symbol of heritage and preservation. Restorers dedicated years to returning airframes to original or modified glory. Engines were rebuilt, fuselages repaired, and control surfaces restored with painstaking attention to detail. Aircraft like Sierra Sioux II, which had flown in the European theater with the 400 Fighter Squadron, were returned to their exact wartime specifications, honoring both the machine and the men who flew it. Every restored Mustang tells a story of combat, of survival, and of human determination to preserve history. Airworthy Mustangs now command prices in the millions, a testament to the value placed on authenticity and performance. Beyond economics, the Mustang became an educational tool. Airshows from Oshkosh, Wisconsin to Wanaka, New Zealand provide audiences with tangible connections to the past. Pilots and volunteers explain the aircraft's history. Engines roar to life, and spectators witness maneuvers that evoke both nostalgia and awe. Through these living displays, the Mustang transcends its role as a mere aircraft. It becomes a narrative of courage, ingenuity, and resilience, a story that continues to captivate new generations. Even in the era of supersonic jets, guided missiles, and stealth technology, the Mustang's legacy persists. Pilots like Doug Matthews push the aircraft to new heights, literally, setting altitude records that prove even 70-year-old airframes can exceed expectations. Museums and collectors continue to safeguard original components, restoring engines, airframes, and instrumentation with the same precision once applied to war-ready fighters. Families like Maloney's and pilots such as Steve Hinton and his son sustain a living connection to the past, ensuring the Mustang remains more than metal. It remains history in motion. The P-51 Mustang's journey is a story of human ingenuity, adaptation, and devotion. From its creation in response to British wartime needs, to its legendary combat record in World War II, to forgotten years of post-war storage, through Korean and Middle Eastern conflicts, air racing, and modern restorations, the Mustang has continually reinvented itself. It has served in every capacity imaginable, adapted to needs of nations and individuals, and survived decades when many of its contemporaries have long since vanished. The aircraft is a testament to engineering brilliance and human passion, proving that some machines can outlast their wars, their creators, and even the eras that spawned them. Even decades after the last combat mission, the P-51 Mustang continues to captivate the imagination of pilots, historians, and enthusiasts around the world. Its legacy has transcended its role as a mere fighter aircraft and evolved into a symbol of innovation, resilience, and human aspiration. Today, Mustangs are celebrated not only for their historical significance, but also for the way they connect people to a tangible, visceral past. A past where courage, precision, and speed determine life or death. Airworthy Mustangs, whether roaring across the skies of Reno, participating in ceremonial flyovers, or standing proudly in museums, represent the perfect blend of engineering genius and human determination. The aircraft appeal has grown into a global phenomenon, uniting communities of collectors, pilots, and fans who dedicate years, sometimes decades, to preserving these machines. In the United States, the revival of warbird culture in the late 20th century played a crucial role in ensuring that the Mustang would never fade into obscurity. The Commemorative Air Force, CAF, originally known as the Confederate Air Force, led efforts to restore and maintain vintage aircraft for public education and display. Their meticulous work allowed hundreds of veterans' aircraft to return to the skies, often in the hands of skilled pilots who understood the Mustang's quirks and performance limits. Air shows became the centerpiece of this resurgence. Spectators flocked to witness aerial demonstrations that combined historical storytelling with breathtaking aerobatics. Flying Mustangs would scream past the crowd at over 400 miles per hour, engines throbbing with the unmistakable roar of the Rolls-Royce Merlin, smoke trailing from wingtips, as pilots performed tight turns, steep climbs, and precision passes that left audiences in awe. These demonstrations weren't mere performances. They were living history lessons, bridging the gap between the technological marvels of the past and the fast-paced modern world. The Mustang's influence also extends beyond the United States. In Europe, aircraft like Ferocious Frankie and Moonbeam McSwine are preserved and flown regularly, connecting younger generations with the realities of World War II air combat. Museums across England, France, and Germany showcase Mustangs alongside Spitfires, Messerschmitts, and bombers, offering a holistic view of aerial warfare history. Restoration teams in Europe often collaborate with American counterparts, sharing knowledge, parts, and expertise to ensure that the aircraft can be flown safely while remaining as historically accurate as possible. These projects are monumental undertakings, requiring extensive research into blueprints, photographs, and wartime manuals, along with painstaking craftsmanship to recreate every rivet, instrument, and paint scheme. In doing so, they honor both the aircraft and the men and women who fought and maintained them under extreme conditions. In the Middle East, the legacy of the Mustang remains particularly potent. Israel, which acquired Mustangs secretly during its early years of conflict, continues to recognize the aircraft as an essential part of its military aviation history. Several Mustangs are preserved in Air Force museums, while enthusiasts organize rare flyovers commemorating past battles. Pilots who once flew these aircraft in combat, now in their senior years, often attend these events, sharing first-hand accounts that bring history vividly to life. Their stories emphasize not only the Mustang's technological prowess, but also the courage required to operate in high-stakes, life-or-death situations. These narratives are invaluable, ensuring that the human dimension of aviation history is preserved alongside the machines themselves. Meanwhile, air racing continues to evolve, pushing restored Mustangs to unprecedented limits. In Reno, pilots compete in high-octane pylon races, each Mustang finely tuned for maximum speed and maneuverability. Engines are carefully overhauled, often generating more than 3,000 horsepower, while airframes are lightened and aerodynamically optimized. Pilots must possess extraordinary reflexes, courage, and an intimate knowledge of their aircraft. The stakes are high, as even a minor miscalculation at speeds approaching 500 miles per hour can be fatal. These races, while thrilling, also serve as living tributes to the Mustang's design excellence, demonstrating that even decades after its introduction, the aircraft remains capable of extraordinary feats. Names like Voodoo, Striga, and Precious Metal have become legendary in racing circles, embodying the Mustang's ongoing dominance in the world of piston-engine aircraft. Restoration and preservation efforts are not limited to flying aircraft. Static displays in museums allow millions to appreciate the Mustang's design and combat history up close. From the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., to the Imperial War Museum in Duxford, England, each Mustang tells a story of innovation, bravery, and global influence. Interactive exhibits allow visitors to explore the cockpit, understand the instruments, and even simulate combat scenarios using advanced virtual reality systems. Educational programs focus on aerodynamics, engineering, and history, inspiring young minds to explore careers in aviation and engineering. These initiatives ensure that the Mustang's influence extends far beyond a nostalgic thrill of a roaring engine, embedding itself deeply into educational and cultural consciousness. The Mustang's influence also permeates popular culture. Countless films, documentaries, and books depict the aircraft as an icon of World War II. Films like Memphis Belle and documentaries, such as the Cold Blue feature Mustang pilots' missions, recreating the tension and heroism of aerial combat. Its distinctive design, sleek fuselage, bubble canopy, and powerful nose, has become instantly recognizable, a symbol of courage and technical mastery. Collectors often pay millions of dollars for airworthy examples, reflecting not only the aircraft's rarity, but also the deep emotional and historical connection people feel toward it. The Mustang has inspired models, toys, and even fashion, proving that its cultural footprint rivals its historical significance. Globally, the Mustang also serves as a reminder of the importance of aviation diplomacy. Surviving aircraft are often loaned to allied nations for exhibitions, fostering goodwill and historical understanding. Japanese and German museums, for example, have occasionally displayed American Mustangs alongside their own wartime aircraft, encouraging dialogue about history and reconciliation. These initiatives highlight the Mustang not only as a machine of war, but also as a bridge between nations, a shared symbol of technological achievement, and a conduit for historical education. Modern technology has further enhanced the Mustang's legacy. Advanced flight simulators allow pilots and enthusiasts to experience flying the aircraft without ever leaving the ground. High-fidelity simulations replicate the Merlin engine's behavior, the aircraft's weight distribution, and even the subtle aerodynamic quirks that define its combat performance. Drone-mounted cameras and high-speed photography capture every maneuver in stunning detail, enabling engineers, historians, and fans to study the aircraft from perspectives once impossible. These tools also assist restorers in creating more accurate replicas and maintaining airworthy examples safely. The human connection to the Mustang remains central to its story. Pilots who fly restored aircraft often speak of an almost mystical bond between themselves and the machine. Unlike modern fly-by-wire jets, the Mustang demands attention, skill, and respect. Every throttle adjustment, rudder input, and banking maneuver requires a level of engagement that modern pilots rarely experience. Veterans and contemporary pilots alike describe a sense of shared history, as if every flight connects them to the countless airmen who once soared into battle. This connection underscores why restoration and flying efforts are not just hobbies. They are acts of remembrance and honor. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Mustang's modern presence is the global community it has fostered. Organizations, clubs, and online forums unite enthusiasts from every continent. Collectors, engineers, historians, and pilots share knowledge, trade parts, and collaborate on restoration projects. Annual gatherings, such as the Plains of Fame Airshow in Chino, California, and the Flying Legends Airshow in Duxford, England, draw tens of thousands of spectators and hundreds of aircraft, creating a vibrant network dedicated to celebrating aviation history. Social media amplifies this reach, allowing rare photos, restoration tips, and flight videos to circulate worldwide within seconds. The Mustang has thus become a unifying symbol, linking people across generations, professions, and nationalities. Despite the passage of time, the Mustang continues to inspire innovation. Modern engineers and pilots study its aerodynamics, engine performance, and structural integrity to inform contemporary aircraft design. The aircraft's laminar flow wing, long-range fuel capacity, and balanced center of gravity remain subject to fascination and study. Even in an era dominated by stealth technology and drones, the Mustang demonstrates that well-conceived design, thoughtful engineering, and adaptability can create machines that remain relevant for decades. In conclusion, the P-51 Mustang's journey from a World War II fighter to a modern symbol of history, culture, and innovation is unparalleled. It has survived wars, races, restorations, and decades of changing technology, all while maintaining a unique and powerful presence in human imagination. From the deserts of Nevada to the skies over Israel, from static museum displays to roaring air shows, the Mustang embodies the spirit of human courage, technological excellence, and enduring legacy. Each aircraft, whether airworthy or preserved, carries with the memories of pilots, mechanics, and enthusiasts who dedicated their lives to honoring its history. The P-51 Mustang is not merely a machine. It is a testament to what humanity can achieve, preserve, and celebrate across generations. It continues to soar in the hearts and minds of people worldwide, an enduring legend in both history and culture, ensuring that the roar of the Merlin engine will never be forgotten.